If you've ever wondered why you wake up colder in modern pajamas, despite living in a world of advanced fabrics, climate control, and convenience, the answer sits quietly in history. Older nightwear was not designed for comfort in a heated home. It was designed for survival in cold rooms, uninsulated houses, and long winters without central heat. The difference between then and now is not nostalgia. It is function. When you look closely, modern sleepwear sacrifices warmth for softness, aesthetics, and mass production efficiency. Older nightwear was engineered by necessity, and that necessity produced smarter thermal solutions than most people realize. Older nightwear was designed for unheated homes, not climate-controlled bedrooms. For most of history, nighttime temperatures indoors were only marginally warmer than the outdoors. Stone walls, drafty wooden structures, and open hearths meant bedrooms routinely dropped near freezing in winter. Nightwear had to compensate for this reality. Long nightshirts, woolen sleeping caps, bed socks, and layered undergarments were part of a complete nighttime thermal system. These garments were not standalone items. They worked together to trap body heat, reduce convective heat loss, and slow moisture evaporation. Modern pajamas are designed with the assumption that the room will remain warm all night. This assumption collapses the moment heating cycles off, power fails, or temperatures drop unexpectedly. Older nightwear assumed failure as the default condition and prepared accordingly. Natural fibers in older sleepwear retained heat even when damp. Wool, linen, and heavier cotton were the dominant materials in historical nightwear. Wool in particular has a property modern synthetics struggle to replicate. It insulates even when wet. When the body perspires slightly during sleep, wool fibers continue trapping heat instead of collapsing. Linen, while breathable, was often worn in layered combinations that regulated moisture without stripping warmth. Modern pajamas, rely heavily on lightweight cotton knits, bamboo blends, or synthetic fabrics that are all about softness and stretch. These materials, they tend to absorb moisture and lay flat against the skin, which actually speeds up heat loss. Once they get damp, they start pulling warmth away from your body instead of keeping it in. And honestly, that's one of the main reasons folks wake up feeling chilled, even though they're technically covered. A practical application today is actually pretty simple. Just replace at least one of your sleep layers with wool, especially your socks or maybe a base layer. Even in a modern home, this small change can immediately improve your overnight heat retention, and you don't even have to crank up the room temperature. Older nightwear, back in the day, covered the body completely to cut down on heat escape. You'd see long sleeves, ankle-length designs, high collars, and sometimes drawstrings as the standard. Extremities weren't left exposed. Head coverings were common too, since a good bit of heat escapes through the scalp, especially in a cold room. And bed socks, they weren't just optional accessories, they were expected. Now modern pajamas, they actually expose a bunch of heat loss zones. Short sleeves, open necklines, thin waistbands, and ankle gaps all let that precious warm air escape and allow cold air to circulate. This kind of design, it makes sense if you're in a heated environment, but it quickly becomes a liability if you're dealing with colder conditions. So, applying this knowledge, it means, rethinking sleepwear as insulation, not just fashion. Wearing a long-sleeve sleep shirt tucked into your bottoms, adding wool socks, and using a soft sleeping cap can really improve your warmth dramatically, without even adding extra blankets. Loose-fitting nightwear wasn't accidental, not at all. It actually created dead airspace between the fabric and your body, which acts as insulation. Air trapped in those layers warms up and, it stays warm. This principle is pretty much identical to how modern cold weather gear works, but oddly enough, sleepwear has moved in the opposite direction. Modern pajamas often fit close to the body, emphasizing stretch and silhouette. While this feels comfortable at first, it actually reduces those insulating air pockets and lets your body heat slip away more quickly. Tight fabrics also compress the fibers, which lowers their thermal efficiency. A modern adaptation is choosing sleepwear that fits relaxed rather than snug. Going one size looser, especially in those colder months, allows natural heat retention to happen without any discomfort. Historical nightwear worked as part of a complete sleep system. Older generations understood that real warmth came from systems, not just a single solution. Nightwear was paired with heavy blankets, layered bedding, and sometimes even enclosed bed structures like box beds or canopy beds that helped cut down on drafts. The clothing really worked together with the environment. These days, folks tend to rely an awful lot on just a single blanket and some lightweight pajamas, thinking the heat in the room will do the rest. But when that doesn't work out, well, you end up pretty uncomfortable. So, bringing back a bit of system thinking means, combining warmer nightwear with layered bedding and paying attention to drafts, instead of just cranking up the thermostat and watching the heating bill climb. So here's a practical example. Try putting a heavier wool blanket right over your body, then a lighter one on top, and wear some natural fiber sleepwear underneath. Honestly, this is just like how folks did it in the past, and it's way more efficient than just stacking up a bunch of synthetic layers. Most pajamas you find today are mass-produced mainly for quick sales. That soft feel when you first touch them sells better than things like durability or actual insulation. Manufacturers use thin fabrics to save on materials and cut down shipping weight, and well, thermal performance usually isn't tested much beyond making sure it's comfortable in a pretty controlled environment. Older nightwear was often handmade or tailored locally using materials suited to regional climates. Durability and warmth mattered more than immediate comfort, Garments were expected to last for years, sometimes even decades, and perform reliably through those harsh winters. For modern users, the takeaway is to inspect sleepwear the same way you would inspect cold weather gear. Fabric weight, weave density, and fiber type matter a whole lot more than branding or softness alone. Homes cooled significantly overnight in the past. Nightwear accounted for this by allowing layering and adjustment. A person might remove or add garments as temperatures changed. Modern pajamas, well, they offer no modularity. They're just worn as is, leaving the sleeper vulnerable to temperature swings. So, reintroducing modular sleep layers basically means treating your nighttime clothing the same way you'd treat outdoor clothing. You'd use a thin base layer, then a warmer outer layer, and removable accessories like socks or caps. This setup lets you adjust your warmth without having to wake up fully or disturb your sleep. Now, understanding historical nightwear, well, it's not really about reenactment, it's about building resilience. These days, with power outages, fuel shortages, and, rising energy costs, passive warmth strategies are becoming relevant again. Nighttime is when the body is most vulnerable to cold stress, especially for older adults. Adopting older principles allows you to sleep warm without relying on electricity. Things like wool socks, layered garments, full coverage, and breathable natural fibers really help reduce dependence on external heat. These practices are honestly low-cost, low-tech, and they've been proven over centuries. For preppers and survivalists, this knowledge is foundational. It improves comfort, conserves resources, and reduces risk during prolonged cold exposure indoors. Modern convenience has erased hard-earned lessons about staying warm. Older nightwear was not primitive. It was refined through generations of trial and error. Ignoring that knowledge leaves people colder, less prepared, and more dependent on systems that can fail. Relearning these principles does not mean abandoning modern life. It means, selectively restoring what worked and applying it intelligently today. If this breakdown added value to your understanding of historical living and practical preparedness, go ahead and subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles. Share this with fellow historians and survival-minded thinkers, and, well, Keep these lessons alive while they still matter.